Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service. Today to present the Jupiter Ingress into Aries. So right now, this moment, Aries, the Aries point features Jupiter. So we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to look at the chart itself and see if there's any good news here, because Jupiter is about expansion. The problem is that we often see Jupiter as this huge benefactor. And the truth be told is that Jupiter is simply expansion. So if something bad is going on, Jupiter might expand it. So the expansion does not have to be tied to only good news. So we're going to talk about that. I also want to talk about the fact that while Jupiter is sitting at the Aries point, it also equals Uranus, which is in the Aries axis, sitting down at, it's in Taurus, hanging out about 14, 15 degrees. So they are in the same axis right now. And here again, Uranus is one of those planets where at the time, things could be hectic because of the unpredictability of the nature of this Uranus planet. But one of my theories, and I think my theory is going to hold, is that the expansion of a rebellion, the expansion of an evolution. And I think that we could, in this country, in the United States, we could go right to Roe versus Wade. And the fact that you can't take rights away from people, particularly people who don't even know anything other than those rights. And I think, and especially older people like myself who were there for the first time around. Now, maybe I was very young, but I was very aware. So I was still old enough to be, I was either a preteen or right in there. But I can tell you that it really affected me. And the fact that this has happened again has really affected me. And so I think that I'm not the only one. I think that most women out there are on this. And this is a fight. This is a rebellion. So here we go with Jupiter, the expansion of a revolution, if you will. I think that it's so unfair that women are never considered equal to men. And then they pull this. Now we're not even considered full citizens because we don't have any autonomy over our own bodies. So we'll get into that. But, it's going to mean different things in different countries. So I really do want to look at the aspect. So before I pull up the chart and get into everything I want to talk about, which is kind of a lot, is that I do want to say thank you for watching this video. I want to thank all of my subscribers and for helping me build this channel. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll become one. In the meantime, like, share, comment, mostly comment, because I'd really love to hear from you. But I do know the likes and the shares really help the algorithms. So I'm going to jump into this chart. We're going to do a lot of work on the chart. We're going to go into what does it mean for Jupiter to Uranus. And it can be a stroke of luck. And I do believe that if you're a pro-life person, you might be considering this a bit of luck. But I don't think in the long run, taking someone's rights away, a whole gender's rights away, is ever going to reflect well. And I think that if you are someone who is pro-life, against abortions, if you will, then don't have one. But please don't think you have the right to tell others what to do. And I think that that's where this is going to come out, because there is this thing here called the separation of church and state. So we cannot go back to religious crap. Also, not all religions believe that, only Christians. So I do think we should highlight that. So we're going to be looking at all the things. And by the way, Poseidon is opposite Jupiter as well down there around those 15 degrees of fixed, so that we can see that this issue is not going away in this country and it will become bigger. Now, this could also stimulate things in other countries. But I think that one of the things that most people will agree with is that America, the United States, has been infiltrated by some very bad apples. And those bad apples, it's interesting because everyone keeps going, well, it happened with Trump that Russia got involved. No. Then we find out in 2008, Russia's involved in McCain's, also Republican, campaign. I'm going to go you one better, guys. I think that this began much longer ago. I think we could look at the Contra affair with Reagan, and we could look at a few other really bad things that were happening that were opening doors to this. So the Republicans have been turning bad for a very long time. And I think what's so sad is that so many wonderful Republicans have done incredible things throughout history. And I don't want us to forget that. These Republicans are, in the words of Heather Cox Richardson, a cabal. And we need to get rid of them. And the Republican Party needs to, I think, reconnect. And if you are one of the good Republicans, then you want to take back your party. I would hope. Anyway, let's get in there and check out this chart. So we're back and we have the chart, and this is what it looks like, okay? So it's, and you'll notice we have the Aries point Jupiter at 00000. It's like right there. And this is the moment when it has now shifted gears. So this would be the chart that's going to be talking about the journey of Jupiter over the next 2 years, because it takes about 2 years to get through a sign. And it does kind of indicate some interesting concepts that could take place over the next 2 years. And I think those concepts will bring a lot of change because of the relationship to Uranus. So when you look at the Aries point, which in this case is right around the cusp of the 5th house, I do want to point out that the 5th house represents expression, self-expression. Allow women to live their lives, to make their own decisions. I think it's so appropriate. Yeah, I'm a definite advocate for women. This is one of the areas that got me involved in politics when I was young. And that's what started me really paying attention to politics, was during this issue the first time around. I think that my real interest peaks with the Kent State murders and then goes with the women's advocacies. And I think that all happens around the same time in the early 70s, 72, 73. And that's really something that ignited me. I would have thought it would have ignited more people, but it definitely ignited me to following politics. Now, you've got Uranus there at 15 degrees of Taurus. And as I said, that's going to be instrumental in terms of what is going to be transpiring over the next 2 years. As I want to say, there's going to be a lot of revolution, a lot of rebellion. I think that the leaders of this country, particularly the political leaders in the Republican Party, might be recognizing that in this country of the United States, that the people do get to rule, that democracies all over the world are going to find out that democracy is about people ruling the country, meaning leaders can't go off on their little diversions here and take us on a little ride down their trails, which people like Mitch McConnell have been doing. I don't think that's going to stand anymore. And I think that's not just here. I think we're going to start seeing this in other countries. And that includes countries such as China, who's been locked down so long right now. So these factors are going to play a part in what is going to transpire over the next 2 years. Okay? And women's rights are big in a lot of countries. Women change the world. I know this is not something white men in particular want to hear, but women brought on the French Revolution, and they weren't even voting. So think about that. Women have voting rights now in every country, with the exception of perhaps the Taliban. And my feeling is even they are not going to get away with what they've been doing to women, because women are smarter. And for some reason, men think they can boss women around and take them by their nose. And maybe some women they can, but you're going to find that there's a great number of us that you cannot. And I don't care what country you're in. So with that said, look at Poseidon over here, which is opposing Uranus. So what's happening is these revolutions are happening against some really bad news to the revolution. Or let's just say this, the revolution is being sparked by what it is people are learning. And I don't know about other countries as much, but boy, are we learning a lot. And I would say that if you lived in South America, the concept of losing your rainforest is going to become probably a bigger issue as well. So I think depending on what country you're in, this issue will reflect whatever that is. And I could go on, but those are the couple that I think are more obvious that I just stated. And since I live in the United States and I'm really hot and heavy over this whole take my rights away thing, I think that we're going to be seeing that in other countries with other aspects, such as in China, just the fact that they took everything away from them, including their economy. So as we move on through all of this, this chart is going to have more and more relevance, because the cool thing about an Ingress chart is that it leaves an imprint on what we can expect from that particular planet. Okay, Jupiter is not, how do I put this? Another reason why it might not show up as so much positivity and a lot more negativity is because it is being ruled by Mars right now. And Jupiter being ruled by Mars means that here we go again with the revolution, with the anger, with the aggression. I think that, you know, they're having to put, and I'm sorry, but I think it's funny, now they're going to have to give protection to the judges who decided that they could rule against the people. And now they're getting protested against. What did you think was going to happen? Again, look at the chart. I'm an astrologer. I see this chart. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you go to Mars, and we'll look at Mars aspects because that's what's ruling Jupiter. So we're going to look at the two groups of aspects because remember, this chart's really important. Notice that Mars is about 5 degrees away from Neptune. And Mars is not in a great place either. So you almost, you have like this mutual reception happening between Mars and now they're not in aspect to one another because Jupiter is at 0 degrees of Aries and Mars is at 19 degrees of Pisces. But you understand that each of these is better placed the other way around. So that makes me wonder. Now I know it's 5 degrees away, but then we have this Poseidon up here. And one of the things I get is that I think people are going to be angry about what they find out. Neptune, discovery, the deception of particularly the Republican Party and the connections they have to Russia they're starting to come out now, but I think we're going to be hearing more and more and more. I think it's going to make people angry. And the interesting thing to look at is this lineup of Astrea, Mars, and Neptune, almost as if I want to say to you, it's not going to be one incident and over. It's going to be something that just continues for some time, because Astrea means there is no solution. So these Republicans are going to try to turn this state, this country, into an authoritarian country. Not going to work real well, because you're working with people who have been for generations Democrats. And we see what Russia's doing to Ukraine, and we're not doing that, and we're not getting involved in that. And so the war, and this is really interesting, the war effort of Russia would be going on while this ingress comes into place, because I think that this is going to be a real eye-opener. And I think that's happening in a lot of countries, because I read today that it wasn't just the United States they were trying to infiltrate. There are many countries that they have been trying to infiltrate. And what's very sad is that some of the people involved in this infiltration of other countries were American. So, I didn't want it to be very political, but I do want to show how politics is showing up in the charts. And this is going to be true regardless of where you live. You can live in some very obscure small country somewhere, and I would still say that you will experience this on some level. Okay? Now, I do want to go and look at the reports for both of the planets, okay? So I'm going to start with Jupiter, because that's what this is about. And the first thing I want to note here is look at the connection that they show, which is a semi-square to Uranus, which again tells us that even though the charts are saying, oh, this Uranus and Jupiter together, it's like, wow, it's going to be like, so, no, it isn't going to be fortunate. Sorry, guys. It's a semi-square, and Jupiter is not in its greatest place. It's in a place of aggravation, war, and all that other stuff. It also is telling you that it's going to affect our futures, all of us. Okay, now I've heard many psychics say this, and many card readers say this. I have heard astrologers say it a little differently, but that we can expect a lot of change. That this is going to really bring up a lot of changes. And those changes will occur within democracies. Okay. No, I don't think we're changing into authoritarians. No, I think it's quite the opposite. I think in order to codify these democracies, so many things will change. And I can't help but think it may be better for the people. But I don't think it will be easy because of all that Uranus and Poseidon. What I think is interesting too is that they still will put, even though it's about 6 degrees away, the conjunction of Jupiter to Neptune. As an astrologer, I think that that's just way too much. I really do. I think it's 6 degrees is a lot, but I do want to point out that as an ingress chart, that there's still something going on between Jupiter and its counterpart Neptune. And remember that Neptune is very, very strong where it is. Jupiter, not as much. And I think this is where we're going to be running into religious issues. And one of the things that we have a real strong separation of church and state, supposedly, in this country. Now we're finding out that we've been infiltrated by the religious freaks. One of the things that, and I do use that word freak, because I don't think that when you think of spirituality, which is what I'm very big in, is spirituality, not religion. Religion is dogma. Spirituality is something that's much more individual, and it's about making yourself better, and it's about your direct connections to God. And I've been spiritual my whole life. I did try religion as a young girl. I was a liturgical dancer. I did everything with a great pastor. But as soon as I got outside of that, and I studied Bible for a couple of years, but I did it from the pretense of being an astrologer. So understand that I had a different value system when I went in. So I did go in and argue with a lot of vicars. That was my main game. But I do believe that religion has limited the people. I think it's oppressed people. And I think that people are turning away from it. The good news is that many are turning towards spirituality, which I believe is more what Christ really wanted us to do. Okay? My personal feeling. Now, as I go through these Jupiter aspects, and believe me, there's all these different, some squares to ascendants, some trines to ascendants. But look at this, Jupiter square Cupido. Yeah, Jupiter is causing a problem to the family. And one of the issues, at least in this country, that is up is family planning. That they are not looking at families. And by the way, that is 6 out of 10 abortions. They can't afford any more kids. This is not the 1800s where you need those kids for the farm and that in the end the kids will pay for themselves when they do their work. No, these kids never pay for themselves. They continue to cost us. And we love them and we honor them and we support them and we want to take care of them. But if you have too many, you can't. And that's a fact. So this Jupiter square, now again, we're talking about 5 degrees away, but it's an ascending, an A, which means that over the next 2 years, that square will get stronger. That is worth noting. Okay? Jupiter is not going to come back to Neptune. It's separating. But it is going to smack the family and the organizations. And I think it's going to rip apart the Republican Party. Okay? There is a lot of might in this expansion of revolutions with the trine to the Volcanus. Okay? So the other thing that I did want to look at, okay, and we're just going back there so we can review, is Mars. Why would I look at Mars? Because it rules the sign that Jupiter has just emerged into. Very important to look at that because it changes and alters the energy of Jupiter. Okay, so let's go back. Let's look at Mars. Okay, so Mars, here we go, is up here. All right. And it too shows a conjunction to Neptune, but the difference is it's coming into being. Okay, so that means over the next 2 years, and actually even sooner than that because Mars moves rather quickly, we are going to have a Mars conjunct Neptune. Which, by the way, will make everybody a little bit lower energy. It will put deception as one of the highest factors because Neptune is the action of deception, but it also can make us much more aware of those deceptions. It does oppose the moon, okay? And I really think you need to look at that because it means that some of the actions that have been set into place in the past, well, they may hold for a minute, but they're not going anywhere because these are actions against women. And it is coming into being. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Okay? Boy, it is going to exponentially get worse for the pro-life people because they're going to get voted out. They're going to get put out. And here we go again with, if you're against something, that's fine. But you don't get a right to tell others what to do. I just can't get over that, you know? As I was talking to somebody this morning, I've never had to face an abortion. I know so hard of a decision it is for women. I know because I have witnessed how hard it is. I myself got pregnant. I was under a scholarship. I couldn't continue with the scholarship because I was in dance, and you can't roll around on the floor when you're pregnant. So, or you can, but you're really limited toward the end of the pregnancy. There was really no way I could take advantage. I made a conscious choice to have my daughter. I thought about it. I was able to say when she came in, I chose to have you. I've been able to tell her all the 40 years of her life that I actually thought about not having a baby and why, but that I really wanted her. And that I was too afraid that if I didn't have her, I wouldn't be able to have another because I do have endometriosis. So I think I made a right choice. But I want everyone to be able to make a choice. I want every child to feel welcomed because God knows I didn't. And I wouldn't pass that on. So please, people, this is just such a really big issue. If you're in the United States, you're going to have to vote. You have to vote. So this is telling us, and oh, look at this. I love the way the people of the Supreme Court do not feel that they have to honor the views of the people. Look at this. That's a people-pleasing thing that's in a semi-square with that Mars. Your actions are not about what the people want. And that's going to be a big issue. And I think it's going to affect the court. And I think that the argument now to put, because the court is stacked, but the argument to put back in more moderates or more liberals is looking very good, considering that we have not increased the Supreme Court for hundreds of years, 100 and some years, I think it is. And yet our population has more than quadrupled, which means by law, we should have more people on the court. So I've always been in favor of a larger Supreme Court. I know a lot of people aren't, but I am. And I think that this is going to cause an argument why we need to increase the court. Until we can do what we need to do in terms of shortening their term limits, which I think is going to come, but not until we're all Democrats. And I think that will happen. So I'm somebody who saw the charts, sees the Republicans' charts, look at what they're trying to do. All this stuff is coming out about them. We're going to be looking at about 2 weeks of stuff on TV about January 6th commission. I don't think Republicans are going to win dog catcher. And they can fight and cheat and do everything they want, but I don't think they're going to win. So, and I think that is already becoming very apparent with what they've done. So look at the square. I think it's just going to shake up politics like nobody's business. What rules politics? Palace. Okay. So we have to look at the things in the chart. Again, I didn't want to be so political, but we have to look at what the chart is telling us. And the chart is telling us that actions are happening against the people or against women in particular. And I think in some countries it will be against the people. So depending, China, do I have to look very far? Okay. The same thing is going to hold true with politics, and we have, so I think it's not going to rip up politics and destroy it. I know a lot in this country would, because remember, we have a black moon in the axis of politics here, which means we never trust. But by the same token, I think that the actions that are being taken by those who consider themselves conservatives are overreaching what we know of as democracy. So enough of that. Now, let me go back. Okay, let me pull this up. Hold on one second, because I have another page of notes. Okay, so I'm back, and here I am, and we're looking at the chart, and you can see here's the Aries point, and we have here Jupiter running right in there with the Aries point. But again, I cannot stress, first of all, business is probably going to get involved. Why? Apple on Vesta, because it's the workforce. Levi Strauss has already made comments that 58% of their workforce is female. I know they're not the only ones. So I do believe that we have not heard the last from businesses. Organizations, as well as the family, is in jeopardy. It's an Aries point. Cupido to Neptune as a midpoint. These are midpoints, okay? These are midpoints. Now, if I come down here, then we do have Uranus. Look at this. Uranus, Poseidon, and I believe, yeah, that's not it. Where is that? That would be over here. That's the ascendant. Okay, so the ascendant's pretty far, although not very far from the sun. Okay, so there is a connection. Let's go back just to check this out. Okay, so we got 19 degrees of Scorpio on the ascendant here. We have the sun at, let me find it. Here it is. 20 degrees of Taurus. Okay, notice that it's only 5 degrees away from the Uranus. Oh, these are such unpredictable times. You know, you can't, just don't rejoice about anything. If you're pro-life, if you see this thing overturn in June, you could be happy for the few months, because that's all it's going to be until it is codified, and it will be codified. So the sun is actually on the descendant. And what that means, okay, so if you think about an ascendant sun, you think about being out in the world, saying hello, all of those things. When you think about it at the descendant, you're thinking more about other people. Okay? And the reason why I say that is because that's the descendant, which is how other people see you and how you see other people and their interactions. And the sun is there, which means that a lot of what is going on, and I'm going to say this, for the world, is probably due to men. Well, we know the rainforest is male. That issue is a male predominant government. China is a male government. United States, what we're dealing with is all males. Okay, I don't understand where their uteruses are that they should make these judgments about women when they don't carry uteruses. I've had an issue with that since the 70s. I still do. You don't have an issue. Why are you saying anything? Okay, all the problems that my uterus has given me in a lifetime, you don't have a right to say peep. Okay, so it's men, you see, it's men. And the unpredictability, it's not all men. I live with a guy who is horrified by what's happening. And I know that a lot of men are. So this is not all men. It's just the people who are enacting these things and making us forcibly live with those things are men. Okay? No, they've got those male women standing beside them. But I'm going to be honest with you, any woman, and I know they have lawmakers doing this, who stands there and calls another woman a murderer for taking care of herself, is a misogynist. So I don't care if she's female. She still doesn't believe that women are equal to men. That, in my book, is a misogynist. And in America, this is hard to believe if you live anywhere else, but in America, we actually have women who think men are better. And I want to know when men have ever brought life into the world. Because in where I come from, in my world, women were always in higher standing. But it's also the culture that I come from. So most women in my family, going back generations, have always run their households. And that means they ran everybody in the household. So I didn't realize how it was in other homes, houses, and scenarios until I got older. And one of the things that made me aware was how the government runs. So just so you know, we do have a thing with men. Now, what's interesting here is the trine between what's going on with Uranus and the sun and the moon, which also tells us that the way out of this will be through men as well. Okay, so in countries where there isn't a preponderance of female legislation, then it would have to be other men that would help institute it. And then once those men do what they need to do, like in, say, a country like China, then perhaps the more feminine legislation qualities can take over. I will say this, we are in a time of the feminine principle. The divine feminine is coming back, and she's coming back in many ways with a vengeance. And we will notice that through Jupiter, okay, that is definitely something that's going to happen. Now, one of the things I thought would be, and I do want to get, I have so many notes. One of the things that I do want to talk about is, first of all, I want to talk about the asteroids that are going to fall in this place of the Aries point. And panacea is there, which means that there will be some solutions to this, okay? But I did want to look up Ceres and Demeter are about parents and motherhood, and it's in the United States, it's being crushed. And I just want to point this out, that Ceres, for example, is at the very end of Gemini, and that it will soon be going into Cancer. And I think it'll be stronger in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, okay? Because right now it's Gemini, it's intellect, we're spewing ideals and ideas, and I think that that's very soon. I mean, it's 2815, so I don't think we have much longer for that. And then the other one that I want to look for, take me a second here, and if I have to, I'll shortcut by looking at the report, but it's always hard to see these smaller ones. But we are looking for Demeter. So let's see if I can find Demeter. And let's do this, because I don't feel like wasting time. And we're going to go to, here we go. And Demeter is Cancer. So Demeter has already made it into Cancer. Okay. It's right here. Sure, I find it now, but look at this. Pain levels running with it. Oh, the pain. Oh, my heart. That's awesome. How accurate is that? 1852, which is almost 19, to 2039. So it's within that 2.5 period, 2.5 degrees that I will work with. And I think it's really interesting. Okay. Not far behind then would be the Chronos Hades, which is us finding out more terrible things about those people and authorities. And that's every country, everywhere in the world, and I know that's happening. And it's getting closer and closer and closer, because they're now literally about 2 degrees, a little more than 2 degrees apart, and till 2030 when they actually come together. So we are already in the process of acknowledging how some of the leaders in the world are not good people. Okay? I think we already know that. But isn't it nice to know that astrology is agreeing with you, and they're saying, oh gosh, you got bad leaders, people. Gonna have to do something about that. And I think they will. So I did want to look at that. And let's look at, so what I want to do, just really quick, because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, is I want to look at 28 degrees of Gemini, and I also want to look at 18 degrees of Cancer on our dial, okay? So we're going to finish out everything then on the dial, but I did want to look at this. So we have 28 degrees of Gemini, and it's getting ready to go into Cancer, and at that point it's going to hit the Aries point, right? Because Cancer is an Aries point. So if I look at what's going on at this, I'm not quite there yet, 28, there it is. Then I'm looking at Apollon node, lots of connections, lots of people, Chronos moon in a sextile. There are people in this country that will back us. It won't be resolved easily. Look at the trine, but it will be resolved. So if you're living in this country, I have a great deal of faith. I know they won't be able to do much about it now, the Democrats, but I think this is what the psychics talked about when they kept saying the Democrats are going to win everything. And the media keeps telling you that the Republicans are due to win the House. I don't think so because of this issue. I really don't. And this is only one of, I think, 3 things we're going to find out about the increasing amount of play Russia's been having in our government, and we're also going to be finding out the insurrection. So when you look at these 3 topics, I don't think it bodes well if you're a Republican. So, and I come from a state, and I just have to say this, where the Democratic person who's ahead in the Democrats, so there's Democrats and there's Republicans, and we're going for our primary, which will be Tuesday, coming up on the 17th. And the Democratic candidate is so far ahead of everybody, meaning 53% of all the Democrats are voting there. And the Republicans can't get to 20%. Okay, so you got 3 running there, but none of them are making it to 20%. So I think it's really interesting what I'm seeing already. And honestly, that started before the news hit. So I think if anything, his numbers are going to go up. So, and I think that's because there's so much coming out about the Republican Party. It's hard to know who to trust, right? So, like somebody said in an article I read, all but a few governors are majorly involved in this mess. So it's really interesting. Anyway, there's a lot of, this is one of the things I wanted to see. See up here, right here, okay, where I'm looking. You have Sirius, which is the planet we've been looking at, but look what's running with it. See the 3 stars? That's chaos. So they just threw being a parent into chaos, being a mother into chaos. But what's really cool, right now people don't know about speaking out, but as it gets worse, Melpomene, and it is getting worse, they are really going to speak out. And I really don't want anyone to get violent. I really, really don't. But I'm worried that it will. Okay. So we see this, okay, and what I want to point out is that this is only, or actually less than 2 degrees away from the Jupiter or the Aries point. So that Sirius is now going to be square Jupiter for the next 2 years because of this chart. Okay, so it's going to be a battle, but over the next 2 years, I think we resolve it. And it is about the health. It is about health. It's about general well-being and health. I just don't think that enough people are. It's not about having or not having babies. It's about a woman's health. That's what it's about. Okay. So now this would have an axis, and it would go about 2 degrees before, so say around 20 degrees, and then it forms this, and this is why I know it's going to happen, but people are bonding together as it ends. So in other words, it's only ending temporarily. And what they're doing is, it's kind of like the news is, we're going to shut it down. Now they're actually going to throw it back to the states. Only certain states will shut down. Like my daughter said, maybe for the first time ever, because of the way it looks for the election, and we'll know better in November. But it does look like in the state I'm in, we might be okay. We don't have any draconian laws, and as long as we can keep the Republicans out of the office, I think we'll be okay. So it is, isn't that sad though? Okay. But I do believe that as this happens, it's going to bring the people together. So what is the bad part? Well, the bad part is that they're going to put a hold on abortions in a lot of states. They're going to outlaw it. They're going to make it illegal. And they really want to go after women, although there have been 2 attorney generals that said they wouldn't prosecute anybody. So we already know that if they don't go through with that, then the law's kind of defunct. I mean, I know they tried to arrest somebody in a state, and the law's still in effect. It hasn't been overturned, so they couldn't try the case. So basically, what you're dealing with here is how people are going to be bonding because of this. And it is an interesting formation. So the other one that we're looking at is down here. And it will have its own axis and all. But I do want to point out the node moon. So this and the ascendant Volcanus show, for those people who think women aren't going to defend themselves, don't know history. That's all I'm saying. And I do believe that they will partner together with others. And you know what the attitude is? Here we go again. Because it's true. Okay, so I did want to look at that. Now, let's go back and finish this up. The asteroids I want to talk about will be falling either in this axis, which means around the 15 degree with Poseidon and Uranus, or around 29 mutable to 1 degree of fixed, or so. I go a little bit. And then we have the 2230, which, as you can see, is we have children, and we have panacea, which means that eventually this will, because that's also pride, okay? I don't think you can take pride in your children if you don't have the money to raise them. I mean, yeah, you can take pride and you can love them, but you can't do for them things that will get them places. It costs a lot of money to raise children anymore. And it talks about, here we go, with productivity and partnership. So I think that there's going to be a lot that happens in the next 2 years. And we can see the amount of lineups and midpoints that are occurring with this Jupiter ingress that tell us that is true. And also look at how this has been such a heartbreak. Saturn to Mars. A real heartbreak. Okay? But it's still an ascendant Neptune, a sun Neptune. In other words, we don't know. I like the way they keep saying, it's not done yet. No, it's pretty much done, okay? Because the reason it leaked was so they couldn't back down. It was a right-wing link. I'll put money on it, okay? So, and it's all about, you have to go through with this. Well, go ahead. So let's go look at these asteroids. Okay, so in this cross, and that's what we're going to call it, we have, not only do we have Adamite here that showed up with Demeter, we have Adamitas, which is an asteroid in the actual Jupiter lineup too. Okay, so we know that that's a factor. We know that it's about children, or so they think. I don't think it is, but I know that it's affecting the raising of children. But it's also about pride. And it makes me wonder if these pro-life people don't want to just knock this law and put it right there as a source of pride for themselves. And if that is the case, shame on you all. It talks about how there's a lot of information we do not know, which will still be coming out, because Calypso, which means the unknown, is sitting with Poseidon and Uranus on this dial. It's about serving other people, but this whole thing also reeks of codependency. It really does. It reeks of codependency. And so when you think, what is codependency? Codependency is how I think what's going on in part is that if we uproar this public so much, they won't pay attention to what's going on over here. And the Republicans are notorious for that, particularly the Trumpkins. Okay, so be aware. It is about money. And one of the things that's being investigated right now is the amount of money that this particular Supreme Court seemed to pull in by the millions, which means somebody else is paying for all these decisions. Okay, I do believe that's going to come out. Right with it is also Hephaestus, which is showing something that isn't a fit. And I think that this particular Supreme Court is not a fit for this country. This is not how the Supreme Court is supposed to act. It's supposed to be in the interest of the people. And this Supreme Court obviously is not. They're in the interest of whoever paid those bills. Who paid off Kavanaugh's gambling, for example? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that could be questioned here. Dreyfus tells us that not only are there losses here, but this is a scapegoat. Anubis is telling us people will die. It is about how people will die. And Fisher, though it's retrograde, is telling you there are lies involved in all of this from beginning to end. And it's telling us that business is going to get involved, that this is they sacrificed. I mean, they may have sacrificed themselves. And that not only is industry and business going to get involved, but we're going to start seeing photographs of things, and we're going to start, there's going to be humiliation factor involved in all of that. So there's a lot coming still. And remember that this is going to occur over the next 2 years. Wow. So I just want to say goodbye. I've ran way longer than I wanted to. I have another video to do today on the nodes. It seems like I do something on the nodes every year, but this is more like a part 2 or a part 3. But in any event, I have to get off this video. It's long enough. With that said, until we meet again, I wish you only happy readings. And thank you for watching the video.